I'm going to introduce you to a very special 12-year-old girl that I met at the symposium I was in Bali, the Tribunal on Natural Justice. While I was there, I met Hanalei, and you are about to have your mind blown. Take a look at this.
The first day of school is always the scariest, and I do this at least twice a year. I was 1 year old when I started traveling. First stop, Hanalei Bay, Hawaii. That's where I got my name. I'm Hanalei Swan. Since then, I've lived and went to school in Panama, Peru, Brazil, Mexico, and Morocco. And now, I live here in Bali, Indonesia. Life's pretty good here. I made friends from all around the world. My dad surfs, my mom writes, I have 1 cat, 2 rescue dogs, and a house full of geckos. I go to the beach a lot. Every day is a new adventure. Happy birthday. With new friends, new sights, and new lessons. I get to do all this because my parents work online. My mom and dad speak all over the world, and I get to go with them. And once in a while, I even speak. I'd like to encourage people to feel confident, happy, healthy, and beautiful, like how we need to feel on a first day of school. A lot of people deal with fear in their life, and unfortunately, there's no quick way to go through it. But for me, a beautiful dress can make anyone feel powerful. My passion has always been art and design. Traveling this much has definitely introduced me to styles, textiles, colors, and designs. From the poyeras of Panama to the Moroccan caftans, to the Balinese kabayas and the Hawaiian sarongs, the list goes on. I get inspired by it all. Then I design. And then one night, I met Karen. I showed her my designs, and she said they should be more than just drawings. They need to be real. And that's what brought us right here, the real creation mode. 10 designs inspired by 25 different countries and 6 continents, and 1 girl who refuses to be afraid anymore. My goal has always been to help people, and that's exactly what this collection will do. It'll make people happy. Everyone involved is doing it out of love, and everyone who has the chance to wear them will feel unstoppable. And now, I think it's time for you to see them too.
All right, well, I'm joined by Hanalei Swan. Hanalei, I was in Bali at an amazing event. We were there for a few days, and one night I had spoke earlier that day, and you came up and started talking to me, and you kind of blew my mind. I mean, first of all, how old are you really?
I am 12 years old.
12 years old, okay. You're a fashion designer at 12.
Yeah.
What makes your fashion different? What is it that you really care about?
So I create eco-friendly fashion that uses sustainable material in a sustainable warehouse where I create everything in-house in Bali, Indonesia. And one of my main things is I want to be able to share my voice and talk about what fashion truly is and the difference between fast fashion and slow fashion and how it's killing our planet.
So fashion's actually killing our planet, in your opinion. How is that the case? So I never even think of what I'm wearing as having anything to do with the health of the planet.
Yeah, it's the second largest contributor to waste on our planet next to oil, which is insane. And the reason why is because the fabrics we wear, like cotton, takes 750 gallons of water to create a single t-shirt. A single t-shirt. 1% of our water on this planet is drinking water. And that's going away from just creating thousands upon millions of t-shirts every single minute of every single day. And so I've looked into sustainable resources and sustainable materials that don't use as much water. Because our water we need to survive, the animals on this planet needs to survive, and that's how we create a lot of our food. That's how we create everyday objects, just through water. And so this non-renewable resource is getting used at such a rapid pace.
So when you say renewable, what type of fabrics are you using? What would we use instead of cotton?
So what I use is bamboo, which doesn't take that much water to actually grow the plants, because bamboo takes up air from the planet, and how it's grown is it grows so fast that the amount of water is so slim that it can basically grow by itself. And so it takes barely any water to create a single bamboo t-shirt. And so we're already cutting out that 750 gallons of water just by using a different type of material. But the way how we process bamboo uses more chemicals that aren't able to be recycled. And so bamboo used to be one of the most eco-friendly fabrics you could find, and it still isn't perfect. And so as we're growing and as we're finding different ways to create materials, we have found that bamboo can now recycle its ways of creating the fabric, the chemicals that's being used. Modal is another fabric that is very eco-friendly, uses a little bit more water, 50% of 750 gallons, but it recycles its chemicals, which means it's one of the leading eco-friendly fabrics that you can use. So bamboo and modal are so high, and it's crazy how just the type of fabric we use can affect our whole planet.
Is it only about water? Is water your main issue?
Water is my main issue because the water on our planet, there's only 1%. Out of 99% of non-drinking water, only 1% is drinking water.
So salt water is the major body of water.
Salt water is. And so we are wasting water from eating burgers. Burgers take so much water to create, to process the meat. We have fashion that takes 750 gallons of water to create for t-shirts. And these stuff we don't 100% need. It's just a add-on. It's just a access. We're able to access it because of the places we live now. But the fabric, we need to start caring more about our planet. We need to stop taking water. These slight things that we take for granted, we need to stop taking them for granted because it's a non-renewable resource. After we wipe up all the water, it's gone. And we can't live without water.
So you're 12. When did you start really getting into the environment?
So it's a crazy story. So I've been traveling ever since I was born. And I've been able to travel to over, I think, 62 countries now, which is insane. And I've been able to travel to 6 continents. And so being able to grow up in different continents, different places around the world, and experience different lifestyles. And I remember sitting at these beautiful crystal clear beaches, relaxing and enjoying myself all around the world, these different beaches. And I remember one day I was revisiting one of my favorite countries, and I started seeing it was full of plastic. Revisited the next, full of plastic. And I thought, how am I able to help this? How am I able to stop this? A lot of kids, when they're around my age, you've probably heard this question before, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wasn't asked that. I was asked, what do I want to be now? And
Your parents ask you that?
Yeah,
when you
my
say that,
parents.
your parents ask you that question.
Yeah, my parents asked me, what do I want to be now?
Did your parents put you up to it, though? I mean, did they just sort of beat into you that all this is going on and you should do something about it?
No, they've been entrepreneurs like ever since I've known them, ever since I was born. And so we kind of have shared that way of creating, that we don't have to have a job. We can do what we love. And so when my parents asked me, what do I want to be now? That gave me the opportunity, since I've grown up in this way where I've seen that what you love can be different, what you love can change the world. And so when I got asked that opened up my mind on so many more opportunities. And I started selling these keychains, and I made about $100 to $200, enough to make my first prototype. I revisited these places around this world, and I saw that fashion is actually killing our planet. And so then I'm like, how can I make a shift in what I'm already doing that I love to help affect another cause that I want to continue, that I want to help, which was eco-friendly fashion. And so I just switched my morals and made something different.
Amazing. You know, my parents, I find myself in a position, I do give my parents a lot of credit for what puts me here, and my father especially would always say, figure out what you love and do that, because it's going to take a lot of work to do whatever you're going to do. And the only way you'll do the work necessary is if you actually love it, and that's proved to be true. I mean, it's amazing to think that you're making these decisions, and I'm sure you get a lot of opinions all over, the map. But you've traveled all over the world. You have a fashion concept, but you also speak out, right? You get up in front of large audiences and speak. And I'm sure there's people sitting at home that are thinking, my, 12-year-old doesn't. I don't think they'd be ready to speak in front of an audience. What is your opinion of your fellow 12-year-olds in the world?
It's all about the mindset. How we grow up, how we're born into a lifestyle of already beliefs that have been adopted from our parents, from our peers, from our family. These beliefs have been adopted and they pass on the beliefs to their children. But we really get to choose. I was growing up in a way where my mom and dad didn't tell me exactly what to do. They didn't tell me what to believe in. They said, believe in what you want. Your happiness is the most important thing. You can believe in whatever you find in the world. And they've helped me along this way of being entrepreneurs, being free-minded, and helping me find out what I love, not forcing themselves onto me. And so when they asked me this, they didn't say, you have to do this. They just said, do you want to? What do you want to be now? Because we all have the opportunity to change who we are. We all have the opportunity, no matter what, in any situation, to do what we love. If you've been brought up in a family of not open-minded people, we can shift our mindset because we don't have to be like everyone else. And so it's the parents who are really affecting the children of today's age.
How are we doing? How are the children of today's age?
The parents and the people, like, let's say global warming, how water killing our planet, how all these different things are affecting ourselves so many ways. You didn't grow up in a place where the planet was dying. A lot of people who must be watching this, they didn't grow up in a place where there's not enough water. People aren't getting the same resources as
we have
we
actual
are.
cities now. You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, I think it's in South Africa? There's different cities now they're looking at, like, they literally are running out of water. So you're right. I don't remember. I remember fears of that. I remember hearing Sahara Desert used to be a forest, but certainly living in California, we see times where it's been some serious droughts, and I'm down in Texas now, and they've seen droughts, and it gets scary. So I agree that things are shifting. As I said, as I was introducing you, anyone that argues with me that, whether like global warming or the environment, because I've always said it, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I'm an environmentalist. But I find it shocking that people have trouble discussing that there's an environmental issue at all. I say you can't eat fish. I mean, you can't go to the ocean and eat fish that you're pulling out of the ocean because it's poison. It's got toxic chemicals in it because of microplastics, because of things we're burning, industrial waste going into our water. So I'm with you, and one of the things that drives me nuts is fracking. I mean, when I think about how much water we use doing that to get an energy source, clean, fresh water, I think you're right. I mean,
and for a non-renewable resource, we can find more resources like air, like solar, all these different things to help create resources and help create energy than things that are non-renewable, because once it goes out, it's gone.
All right, but let me get back to this question.
Yeah.
I look at you as a 12-year-old, I'm like, wow, man, if the earth was covered with 12-year-olds like you, then we'd be just fine.
Yeah.
But am I wrong? They don't seem like they're awake. They really actually seem like we're training them to not think at all. Is that your perspective of your generation?
That's how I see it, because adults, you guys didn't grow up in how the world is now. The world is dying. The house is on fire, and we're either going to stay here and just let it be or escape and help stop it. And so with the kids of today's age, we are being aware of this. But the people, like the adults here, they're saying, it's okay, it'll blow over, other people will help it. But we need more people to stand up, more people to talk about our environment, because our environment is the most important thing. We don't have a plan B for another 100 years. Right. We don't have anywhere else to go, and we can't just look for other places. We have to think about how we are now. And so how the world is kind of controlling today's kids' brains, today's humans' brains, like how we are, we need to start opening up. One of my favorite things is listen, but be skeptical, from the 5 agreements. Listen, pay attention, but create your own way of thinking. And so that's how we need to think now. We need to research. We need to find out, because people may think, the people who are watching this probably think, me alone can't save the world. But if we get a community, if we get a group, we can really affect the world.
I agree with you. I mean, so look, I know there's people out there. I've seen all the writing. We tend to judge people that come out and speak, especially kids. Oh, they were put up to it. I remember actually hearing that when I would go out and speak as a kid. My parents were fairly active, and I was too. You could tell I have a big mouth. Didn't just develop that, 10 years ago. I always was speaking out. I was raised in a similar way. It is how we're raising our kids, which is what I really want to focus on today. This is one of my favorite stories of pharma-free families. Let's meet Hanalei's parents.
13 years ago, my parents started an experiment.
To break out of society's norm, to go against the grain.
And to find our own American dream.
We quit our corporate jobs and we sold all of our possessions.
And started traveling the world with our 1-year-old daughter.
Did we win the big jackpot?
Complete opposite. We lost everything financially in the 07-08 real estate bubble.
And like many others, we had to find a way to get our minds in a space of joy and abundance again.
And to raise a child in a world that wasn't based on what you owned, what you drove, or where you lived, but who you were as a human being.
Over the last 11 years, we've lived in over 48 countries.
And have shown our daughter cultures, history, and how to build a business through experience and not a textbook.
Because of this worldly education, I borrowed $20 when I was 9 years old to buy fabric, threads, and needles, and turned it into a 6-figure, socially conscious, and eco-friendly fashion brand. At the age of 11, I turned down a $30 million venture capital deal because it wasn't aligned with my values.
I'm Brian.
I'm Rhonda.
And I'm Hanalei, and we're the Unstoppable Family.
I'm now joined by Hanalei's parents, Brian and Rhonda Swan. It's a pleasure to have you guys. Thank you for coming in all the way from Bali. Obviously, you've been, I think, traveling all over the country. In fact, you do a lot of traveling. Tell me, when did you don't seem to live like the stereotypical life. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You're, coming home. Maybe you both are working and you see your daughter for a few hours at night. Was that a potential for you, or were you always able to sort of live outside the box? What shifted? What happened?
Let's you start.
Yeah, because we actually, we grew up in the U.S. Brian's from, Illinois. I'm from Michigan, and I grew up with the American dream on my mind. I knew that, my mom didn't work. My family was, blue collar, and I wanted to get an education, got my master's, and wanted to run a huge corporation. So I actually started off and moved to California with my first big corporate job, and I was working and grooming to run the whole Western division, of a big company. And so that was our American dream. He was a robotics engineer, and it shifted a few years, about 3 years before Hanalei was born. I actually witnessed something that just completely shifted my whole mindset. I went, we lived in San Diego. We moved here. Brian and I actually met surfing in the water in San Diego 21 years ago. Yeah, and I went to a meeting at 7 a.m. Did that, traffic down the 5 for about an hour, and went into a meeting. And the woman that I wanted to be like, that I thought, the perfect, the hair, the bag, the shoes, done, corporate, everything. I watched a woman walk in late to a meeting, about 15 minutes late. And she stopped the meeting and said, "You're late." And she's like, "I'm sorry, I just had a baby. And she's 6 weeks old, and I had to drop her off at daycare." And the woman started to cry. And at that time, I mean, we didn't even talk about kids. We had just gotten married. Like, we were corporate, executives. We're killing it in life. And my whole body shifted. And I saw this woman, the fear in her eyes that she dropped this baby off. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. This baby's 6 weeks old. This woman's come to work at 7 in the morning. My boss said, if you don't come in on time and leave at 6 o'clock at night and pick the baby up, you'll never be able to have enough money to put food in this baby's mouth. And my whole world shifted.
Wow.
So that was what we thought we wanted to have.
And then you shifted out. Describe your life now. How did you shift it?
Well, how it shifted, we were both corporate. I was a robotics engineer. And she said to me, she goes, this was the day after. I want to have a family. And I said, this is why we bought this big house on the hill. And she goes, I'm not going to put my family in daycare. And I said, I don't care if I'm my boss's boss's boss. We're never going to be able to afford this house. And she goes, so you better find something, find another job. I go, you better find something you can work from home. And she said, done. And it started that way. She was online being successful, and she retired me from my corporate job. And then what happened was the 07, 08 real estate bubble, and we lost everything financially. And what happened from there, we were put in a spot of where do we go from here?
But Hanalei was just born.
Yeah.
This is so crazy.
My son's 11. We had our kid right about the same time, just a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. Like, we went on this path after I said, I'm not working anymore. I mean, that's a hard shift, right? We were, doing really well, 6 figures, but we needed 2 incomes. Yeah. And I watched this interview with Steve Jobs, and he's like, look, the internet. I'm like, what, the internet? Like, it barely even came out, right? And I said, look, I'm going to look for ways that I can leverage, create, business structure online. But we were doing extremely well for 3 years. Like, I retired him, like he said, and then we were putting ourselves on a plan that I could have a baby, never put her in daycare. We started investing heavy in real estate so that I knew when she was born, all this, real estate properties, we're going to do well. We're just going to live that new way of thinking, an American dream. But we then did lose, everything. And she had just been born when we found out that all the investment that we pulled out our IRA, you pulled out your dad's life insurance, every single thing that we had put into this was gone. So you want to talk about really considering, do I go back to get that job again?
Right. Yeah, maybe we're wrong.
But I'm looking at her, I was right, exactly. And that's what we were so judged even before we even started traveling. Like, it was like, be responsible. Get a real job. You have a baby now. Like, what's wrong with you guys? And then once we found out that we had to, cut our losses, and I'm looking at her in the eyes going, you're the whole purpose of why we did this. And I had a vision and a vow to never put her in daycare. So that was our driving force. And so when we found out we lost everything.
Yeah, we had a decision, and we're like, okay, where do we go from here? Go back and get our corporate jobs? Yeah. Or, I like to call it living my perfect day. And it really starts back from my father. I grew up in a town of 2,000 people, cornfields of Illinois. And my father, he actually was gay. My mom and dad divorced. And so that was way back 30-some years ago.
Before that was accepted.
Before it was accepted.
A little tiny family in a town of 2,000, this family, and then they find out the dad is gay.
And
it was huge for you guys.
He contracted AIDS.
Yeah.
And from the age when I was Hanalei's age, I knew death, basically. I got to see him living. He knew he had an expiration date. So by the time I was Hanalei's age, he's like, everything shifted. He wasn't sure if he was going to live 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And he's like, I want to go travel. He's like, I had two brother and sister. He goes, who wants to go traveling? Because he wanted to go see the things before he was going to pass. Yeah. So that's kind of like the long story of how it all started. So when it came to a point to where, like, do we go back and get our corporate jobs? I'm like, no. I'm like, this is something, she made a vow to Hanalei, and we said, you know what, this internet thing is going to keep on going. Let's go do it, because we don't know when our expiration date may be.
You listen to how clearly she speaks. One of the things, I just wonder how we're raising our kids. First of all, a lot of the things we discuss here, should we homeschool? Should I homeschool my kids? People are really grappling with that. In California, those people that aren't vaccinating. They're being left with very few options. They think, and I say, the school system's terrible. I mean, if you have to get your kid out of the school system, then do it. But what were some of the choices you make? Did you vaccinate, Hanalei, to begin with?
No, we didn't. When I opened my mind up to really what's happening, I started doing all the research. I'm like, I have a family member that child has autism. And I remember seeing her bright-eyed, beautiful little girl. And she went and got, I don't know which shot it was, it came back a completely different person. And that's when I, got pregnant. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I'm making a choice for her body. And I don't know what we're putting in our bodies. And we didn't have the choice back when we were kids because our parents weren't educated. We started to open up our mind to so many different thoughts. Like she was supposed to be born at home, but she was 33 days early. So I had to have her in a hospital. You want to talk about the battle? I was like, don't touch me. You don't put anything in my body because if it's going to make me numb, what's it going to do to a tiny little baby?
Right.
I mean, and that was the kind of stuff that we were so passionate about. And we started just exposing our mind. And
did you have a battle at all? Were you both on the same page through all
No,
that?
we were both on the same page at this
I
point.
presented my case pretty strong. I'm like, look at this. And there were some books that I was really heavy in.
I believe you. I believe you could
So there was no battle. It was more of when she was presented and she's giving me this book, I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like everybody gets vaccinated. That's kind and she's like, no, I'm doing my research. I'm like, all right, keep going.
Now, how about for you? I mean, we see everyone wants to talk about the story of the children that are starting to say, I'm not sure I agree with what my parents did here. Do you ever question that decision? When you look at a lot of people that are talking about environment tend to say vaccines are one of the great things that save the planet. Like it saves children's lives. So there is an actual sort of dichotomy in the world that you're in. What do you feel about that?
So I have never the only time I've ever gotten deeply sick was once, and that was when we were in a high pressure of altitude, and I got altitude sickness. Never once have I had to go to the doctor and get diagnosed or get terminally sick, or I'm not sure how to correctly say this. I'm just trying to go off my brain right now.
Talk about
But
getting cancer and things like that.
But I haven't gotten sick, and I've been able to travel. And how I've seen it is you adapt to your surroundings. Our bodies are the smartest thing that has ever been created. And we know how to fight off disease. We know how to do all these incredible things. And so it's about adapting to your surroundings. I feel like when kids are sheltered, like they're in their house all the time, or their parents don't want them to go outside and see the world, or they don't want them to get sick because they're afraid. The whole thing is about exploring. It's about learning, and it's about trying new things. And so our bodies adapt to our surroundings. And so I don't think I've ever gotten really horribly sick.
So have you guys been to like Africa or India or like?
We've been to Africa. She didn't go to Africa. Oh no, she was in Morocco. Sorry,
Because I think I think it's easy to think in America. I mean, so my philosophy with my kids, they're not vaccinated, but I'm not sure. I've always said I'm not quite sure if I'm going to go to places because I would agree that our bodies are designed to drink the water, the air, the food that I'm living in, but to go to other places. But you guys are like trekking around the world, which takes a whole other set of cojones to it. Like, does it ever challenge you?
Totally.
Like,
I mean, we've been, we didn't go to India. She just finally went to India this last year because of that reason. We had to be really aware.
So you waited. You said, we're not going to go in while she's proud. We want a strong immune system.
Yeah, I mean, we went to a lot of holistic doctors, and I asked, like, how do I protect my child? Like, we were afraid, like, especially with the medical side of it all. I mean, I remember taking her to the very first pediatrician, and we were so attacked. I'm like, I don't even know what to say to these people. Like, I don't even know how to answer because I was so researched on what I believed in, but I couldn't defend or argue with them because it was like, do you know what you're doing? So we had to really take it on our own, and that was not easy. I mean, we were chastised, by everything that we were doing. So when we decided to travel, we're like, okay, I would, contact people on reference. Like, what do I do? Like, she's never drinking milk because I thought it was crazy why would another species drink another species' milk? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We're the only ones that do it. So I didn't want to bring in dairy. So I was starting to just research all that type of stuff that would allow me to make a better decision. But it was risky, and we know that there were certain risks, but we took certain precautions. I mean, I would get a holistic, type of, they would put like cocktails together and say, okay, you can take this to protect your body, So yeah, we did have an element of uncertainty, but it was also because the population's not educated on it either. So there's too much fear coming. We just blocked the fear and stayed with what we believe to be true. And I mean, kids getting dirty is what helps inoculate
Do you
them
keep
from a
it
lot
quiet?
of things.
I mean, do you keep that issue quiet? Like, do you keep your sort of how you like?
I think everyone
It's a
kind of
scary world we're
expects
in,
us
right?
to be
Right,
like,
yeah.
we're the ensemble family. They've
Yeah.
traveled the world. The kids, she's only had antibiotics once. And it was because she had I think a sinus infection. So like once, I mean, that's how they're supposed to be used, you know?
Right.
And I took
So you're not anti-medicine altogether. We're in an
No,
emergency
we're not
situation.
yeah,
we're not
we're
going to
not
avoid
like,
hospitals.
We're not burning Bibles or crosses, like
Right.
right. Like we believe in what the research and I think what medical has done for us. But our choices, we decided we wanted to make a really good choice, and the things that we were seeing were happening just were not allowing us to lean towards. We're only putting her life and her trust in medical industry or the government. You know, I wanted her to help make her own decisions, and now she can. I mean, she's 12, she's getting ready to be 18. She's, able to make certain decisions on what she wants to do.
So you guys told me you were just in an RV. You went from,
Yeah.
I think it was up
Nevada.
northern Nevada all the way over to
Miami.
Miami. So you guys, and you do that a lot. You do that a lot. You travel around. You just hop from place to place.
It was the craziest trip for how many days?
It's been 77 now. We're on 77 today.
77 days of being in an RV, going to Burning Man, being in different climates. I've never lived in the States for like longer than
Your year of your.
Oh, then never mind. But I've been here for a year. Like, I've never lived in the States, like, officially. So it's cool, like, we've been revisiting all these places that Americans would be like, that's what tourists go to. But I'm like, I'm a tourist in my own country. Like, I can actually say that.
So the philosophy, she sort of described that you didn't put upon Hanalei, this is what you need to do. You need to be thinking about the future. You said, what do you want to do now?
Yeah, we've always given her like permission. This is probably the best way. We've talked to her since she's like 4 years old as if she's a person. And when people come up like, what is your daughter's name? Or what does she like to eat? It's like, ask her. Yeah. Well, what does she ask her? So we've always given her that where she can make choices.
Yeah.
And for anywhere we go, we still, like, even when she's 4 or 5 years old, we're like, what do you want to do? And most people don't do that. So when she's been able to make choices at such a young age, it's becoming easier and easier.
But there'll be people that would say, certainly, you're the adults. You're parents. You've lived on this planet more. There's got to be something you can pass that you got to say. There's some certain rules to how you live in this world. How do you decide whether it's a rule, or do you give any rules at all?
Well, when we follow the rules, or we follow the laws, we break the rules. We're kind of renegades that way, right? Because, I mean, yeah, certainly we have a very connected family. We hold very strong values as a family, how we treat people. But in reality, families need to do what's good for the family, and so that's how we've lived, is we all make decisions.
Do you ever get disciplined? Do they ever do you ever get timeouts? What's the discipline? I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from them.
One thing is that my parents have completely taken out the words no, not, and don't.
Okay.
Those words haven't heard them say except for, you're gonna get hit by a car, please stop, or something like that. And it's always been like, be cautious, be aware, you're making your own decisions, but we want to give you both sides on how that decision is going to affect you. Yeah. Instead of them making the decision for me, they say, okay, if you walk across the street without looking, you have two options. You're going to get hit by a car, or you can look and you could see when is the right time to go, or like an example like that, or be cautious. Make sure that you're standing your ground. Make sure that you're doing these things. And I've always had the decision. I can say, no, I don't want to look both ways before I cross the street. But it's always been my decision and how I see it. And they just give me the...
We're a little more protective on the crossing the street
No,
thing.
I'm doing an example, okay? I'm doing an example.
That was a very edgy example.
They're throwing their kid in front of the highway.
I'm sorry, I was doing an example. I thought it would make more
think about
sense.
this. So I always say, because my parents pulled me out of school when I was in fourth grade, and then I was the oldest. So my brother and sister had, really were homeschooled all the way through. But my parents, really raised me to question authority. And I would always say that if there was one principle or law in my house, it was question authority. Trust your own instincts over all else. And I have to say that does not make parenting easy because you are the
They're
authority.
opinionated.
Well, and you're the authority. Like if you're telling your kids, question authority, then everything the parent's trying to get across, I'm like, well, I'm going to challenge that, Dad, because you told me that that's what I was supposed to do, and I'm not really grooving with it, So in the end, though, I mean, obviously she seems free thinking, you're dynamic. Do you guys write books on this? And are you putting information out? So I want 2 books. First of all, how you draw the lines and get a kid to come out like this.
Yeah.
And then how the hell do you go from flat broke and travel the country 70, 80 days and survive? And I mean, it sounds really enviable. It sounds like
It's almost kind of ridiculous,
it
to be
is,
honest.
yeah.
It's been 12 years. This November 25th, we've been on the road for 12 years. Traveling around, we started off at 3 months and then 6 months and then a year. We've been in Bali, Indonesia for 4 years. That's the longest. But yeah, it starts off with, I was born, my dad said, kids are meant to be seen and not heard.
Right.
So I immediately was like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
I have an opinion, right? So I was that person.
Right.
So when I want to raise a child, I'm like, well, I want her to give her some leeway to figure this thing out, you know? And so thank goodness we stopped the one, because we're like, you know what? She's kind, she's empathetic, she sees the world, it allows us to kind of so she hasn't really been a battler, because there's no reason to battle in anything. If she states her claim and no, I do want to go play with this kid on the beach. This is why, Mom, I'll be aware. And she would stake her claim, this is how I'm going to react in this moment. So we're like, okay, we let her, but of course we're always kind of there. Most, I think, families and kids are so, don't do that, be aware. And all of our bad energy is all over the kids. So they're immediately got fear subconsciously.
They're not living in their own body. They're just, what is Mom and Dad thinking the whole time versus what am I thinking?
Yeah.
One of the questions you had is for Hanalei is did the parents push? We're not in the fashion world. We're not artists.
Yeah.
She's figuring out her own way, and we're kind of just guiding, along. So
we weren't aware. He wasn't. She made him go in and count the amount of, remember that, counting T-shirts that Dad had, and they tallied the amount of water he was wasting. You can't unhear that. We didn't know anything about it, so she started, looking at it and researching slow fashion. We're like, now we want to support that, because if kids have something, a stand, we always say our motto is be kind with our words, but strong with our stand.
Has she been homeschooled this whole time, or in and out?
I've chosen how I wanted to be schooled. For the first couple of years, till 3 years ago, I've been wanting to go in school because I've been wanting to choose to be with people, to be with friends, and I have chosen that. My parents wanted to put me in homeschool. They just wanted me to be happy. And so recently, when my fashion thing started, I'm like, I actually want to do this. This is actually what I love, and I want to put more time. The schooling system wasn't helping me in a way where it was expanding my brain. Instead, it was expanding my brain on things like numbers, more of the academic side. When I'm a creative, I want to create things, I want to be different, and I never had a place to express who I wanted to be. I never had a place where I could learn business, to learn the money side on working and creating your own company. So I decided in myself that I wanted to homeschool, and I wanted to learn more about the things that I want to learn and not just the things that the education system wants me to learn.
Well, I mean, you guys are doing something right, and we could do this, all day long. You're touring around. You're outspoken. So if we want to follow the work that you're doing, give me some websites. What is it,
What is yours?
Yeah, what's your website?
HanaleISwan.com is where you can find all my fashion, find all of my ideas and all of my inspiration, and learn a little bit more about me.
Cool. And how about you guys?
Unstoppable Family.
UnstoppableFamily.com?
Yeah, UnstoppableFamily.com.
All right, awesome. Look, I think that you're an inspiration. You're out, you're talking about it. I keep saying, in this movement of health, really, and that you guys are covering a whole other gamut. I mean, when you're talking about raising kids, but when it comes to health, we all have to, I think, come out of the closet and say, hey, our kids are clean, they're pure, and they're doing really well. If we don't represent these great families like yourselves, then why will there be a change? I think there's a lot of people, I hope, that see this and say, geez, I want that. You're emulating something really beautiful and powerful. So thank you for coming in today and
Thank
sharing
you.
your family with us.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
take
much.
care, you guys. Keep traveling. I hope to see you out there, maybe in Bali.
Yeah, come visit.
Crash in your house.
This guy will take you surfing.